The sun was just beginning to rise over the bustling streets of New York City, casting a golden glow over the quiet neighborhood by the East River. Joggers and dog walkers had just started their morning routines, the air crisp and filled with the sound of distant traffic. Among them was Rachel Parker, a 32-year-old fitness enthusiast who ran the same route every day. She had no idea her life, and the lives of countless others, was about to change forever. As Rachel jogged along the riverbank, something caught her eye. At first, it looked like an ordinary suitcase, slightly scuffed, lying in the brush a few feet from the path. She might have ignored it, thinking it was just discarded luggage, but something about its placement seemed off. It was too close to the water, and the zipper looked strained, as if the suitcase was bursting at the seams. Her curiosity got the better of her. She slowed down, stepping cautiously toward the object, her heart beginning to race for reasons she couldn't yet explain. The smell hit her before she even reached the suitcase, a sickly metallic odor that sent alarm bells ringing in her mind. Rachel recoiled, covering her nose with her sleeve, but she couldn't look away. With trembling hands, she reached out and unzipped the suitcase, her stomach churning with dread. What she saw inside would haunt her for the rest of her life. Tangled within layers of plastic bags was a human body, or rather, parts of one. Pale, lifeless limbs, twisted unnaturally, and dark stains seeped through the makeshift wrappings. Rachel stumbled backward, letting out a scream that echoed through the stillness of the morning. Other joggers nearby froze in their tracks, their faces turning pale as they realized something terrible had happened. Within minutes, the scene was swarming with police officers, their flashing lights reflecting off the water. The area was cordoned off, yellow tape fluttering in the breeze as detectives and forensic teams began their grim work. Rachel, still shaking, was led to the side by an officer who tried to calm her down enough to give a statement. Her mind raced as she replayed the horrifying image over and over. Detective Laura Bennett arrived shortly after, her face a mask of professionalism, despite the horror she knew awaited her. She had been on the force for over a decade and had seen her share of gruesome cases, but this one felt different. There was something eerily personal about the way the body had been dismembered and stuffed into the suitcase, as if the killer wanted to send a message. The victim was quickly identified as Lisa Harper, a 28-year-old woman who had been reported missing 3 days earlier. Lisa's friends and family described her as kind, hardworking, and full of life. She had no known enemies, no apparent reason why anyone would want to harm her. But as the investigation progressed, the seemingly perfect image of Lisa's life began to crack, revealing secrets that would take the case in a shocking direction. The suitcase itself was the first major clue. It was an expensive designer piece, not the kind of thing someone would discard lightly. Inside, investigators found not only Lisa's remains, but also a single strand of blonde hair that didn't match her own. They also discovered faint traces of soil and plant matter, suggesting the suitcase had been moved from another location. These clues hinted at a methodical killer who had gone to great lengths to conceal their crime, but had made critical mistakes along the way. As news of the grisly discovery spread, the media descended on the neighborhood, turning the quiet riverside area into a frenzy of reporters and camera crews. The public was horrified, their imaginations running wild, with theories about who could have committed such a heinous act. Was it a jealous lover? A stranger with a dark obsession? Or someone much closer to Lisa than anyone could have imagined? For Detective Bennett, the first step was retracing Lisa's final days. Security footage from her apartment building showed her leaving on the evening of April 12th, wearing a bright red coat and carrying a small handbag. She appeared calm, unaware that she was walking into danger. Witnesses reported seeing her at a nearby cafe later that night, where she met with an unidentified man. The man, described as tall with dark hair, was caught on surveillance cameras leaving the cafe with Lisa. But after that, the trail went cold. In interviews, Lisa's friends and family painted a picture of a woman who was kind but private. She had recently ended a tumultuous relationship with her boyfriend Greg, but insisted to friends that she was fine and ready to move on. Greg was quickly brought in for questioning, his alibi scrutinized. He claimed he hadn't seen Lisa in weeks, but his nervous demeanor and vague answers raised red flags. While Greg remained under investigation, another potential lead emerged. Lisa's best friend Emily revealed that Lisa had confided in her about a new relationship she was keeping secret. According to Emily, Lisa had been seeing someone who was complicated and unavailable. Emily didn't know the person's name, but she recalled Lisa mentioning that the relationship had become tense in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. As investigators delved deeper into Lisa's life, they discovered a series of encrypted messages on her phone. The messages, sent through a private chat app, were from someone using the alias Raven. The conversations were flirtatious at first, but grew increasingly hostile, with Raven accusing Lisa of betrayal and threatening to expose her secrets. The breakthrough came when tech experts managed to trace the messages back to a woman named Rachel Blake, a married real estate agent who lived just a few blocks from Lisa's apartment. Rachel was brought in for questioning, her polished appearance masking the turmoil beneath the surface. At first, she denied knowing Lisa, but when confronted with the evidence, her story began to unravel. Rachel and Lisa had been involved in an affair that had spiraled out of control. Rachel, terrified of losing her marriage and reputation, had begged Lisa to keep their relationship a secret. But Lisa, tired of living in the shadows, had threatened to go public. In a fit of rage and desperation, Rachel admitted to luring Lisa to her home under the guise of reconciliation. The confrontation turned violent, and Rachel claimed she acted in self-defense when Lisa attacked her. But the evidence told a different story. Forensic analysis revealed that Lisa had been struck from behind, her injuries inconsistent with Rachel's account. Investigators pieced together a chilling timeline. After killing Lisa, Rachel had spent hours dismembering her body, carefully cleaning the crime scene, and disposing of the remains in the suitcase. She had even dyed her hair to match the strand found in the suitcase, in an attempt to mislead investigators. The trial that followed was a media spectacle, with Rachel's double life laid bare for the world to see. The courtroom was packed with reporters, spectators, and Lisa's grieving family, who listened in agony as the details of her final moments were recounted. Rachel showed little remorse, her cold demeanor shocking even the most seasoned observers. In the end, the jury found Rachel guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but the scars she left behind would never fully heal. Lisa's friends and family were left to grapple with the loss of a woman who had been full of potential, her life cut short by someone she had trusted. As the case faded from the headlines, one question lingered in the minds of those who followed the story. How well do we truly know the people we let into our lives? Lisa Harper had placed her trust in someone who seemed to care for her, only to discover too late the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. The suitcase by the river became a haunting symbol of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of betrayal. For Detective Bennett, it was a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance and the relentless pursuit of justice, no matter how twisted the path may become. The investigation into Lisa Harper's murder was like peeling back the layers of an onion. Every revelation only seemed to expose more questions. From the moment her dismembered body was discovered in a suitcase near the East River, detectives knew this case was going to be anything but straightforward. Detective Laura Bennett, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving even the most perplexing cases, dove into the details with relentless determination. She wasn't just looking for the how, but the why. What could have driven someone to commit such a grotesque act? The first step was understanding who Lisa Harper really was. On the surface, she seemed like the kind of person no one could ever imagine falling victim to such a brutal crime. A graphic designer by trade, Lisa was described by her coworkers as a perfectionist, someone who loved creating beauty in the world. Friends painted a picture of a woman who was always the life of the party, quick to laugh and fiercely loyal. But as detectives spoke to more people in Lisa's orbit, cracks began to appear in the polished image. Lisa had recently ended a long-term relationship with her boyfriend, Greg Turner, a construction manager with a short temper. Neighbors reported hearing loud arguments from Lisa's apartment in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. One neighbor recalled a particularly heated exchange just days before Lisa was last seen. She was shouting at him to leave her alone, the neighbor said. She sounded scared. When detectives brought Greg in for questioning, his alibi was shaky at best. He claimed he had been at a friend's house the night Lisa disappeared, but couldn't provide any proof to back it up. As the interrogation continued, Greg's anger bubbled to the surface. I didn't hurt her, he snapped when Detective Bennett pressed him about the nature of their relationship. She broke up with me because she said I was too controlling. I was trying to fix things. His insistence that he had nothing to do with Lisa's death didn't convince Bennett. The timeline was murky, and Greg's volatile personality made him a prime suspect. But Greg wasn't the only person in Lisa's life with a potential motive. As detectives combed through Lisa's phone records, they discovered a string of text messages between her and her best friend, Emily Shaw. The messages revealed that Lisa had been keeping secrets, even from her closest friends. Emily told detectives that Lisa had recently started seeing someone new, but had refused to share any details. She said it was complicated, Emily explained. I thought she meant it was just casual, but now, I don't know. The mystery deepened when investigators uncovered an encrypted messaging app on Lisa's phone. Conversations with a user named Raven suggested that Lisa's new relationship wasn't just complicated, it was dangerous. You promised to keep this between us, one message read. If you betray me, I'll make you regret it. Another message, sent just days before Lisa's disappearance, was even more chilling. If I can't have you, no one will. Tracing the identity of Raven became a top priority. Forensic experts managed to link the account to Rachel Blake, a local real estate agent who was married to a prominent businessman. On paper, Rachel's life seemed perfect. She had a thriving career, a beautiful home, and a picture-perfect marriage. But beneath the surface, things were far from ideal. Rachel's husband, David, had been unfaithful in the past, and the cracks in their relationship were well known among their social circle. When detectives brought Rachel in for questioning, she initially denied knowing Lisa. Her polished demeanor and calm answers gave little away, but Detective Bennett wasn't convinced. The more Rachel spoke, the more inconsistencies emerged. Why would I have anything to do with her? Rachel said, her voice steady, but her hands fidgeting. I've never even met her. But the evidence told a different story. Surveillance footage showed Rachel meeting Lisa at a coffee shop just a week before her disappearance. The two women appeared to be arguing, their tense body language drawing the attention of other patrons. When confronted with the footage, Rachel's facade began to crack. She admitted to knowing Lisa, but claimed their relationship was strictly professional. She was helping me with a design project for one of my properties, Rachel explained. It wasn't until detectives uncovered a series of payments from Rachel to Lisa's bank account that the truth began to emerge. The payments, disguised as consulting fees, suggested a deeper connection between the two women. Under pressure, Rachel confessed to having an affair with Lisa. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, Rachel said, her voice shaking. I was lonely and she made me feel seen. The affair was explosive news, but it still didn't explain why Lisa had been killed. Rachel insisted she had nothing to do with the murder, claiming she had ended the relationship weeks earlier. But detectives weren't convinced. The threatening messages from Raven matched Rachel's writing style, and forensic analysis revealed traces of Lisa's blood in Rachel's car. The breakthrough came when investigators found a journal hidden in Lisa's apartment. In it, Lisa had documented her growing fear of Rachel. She's obsessed with me, one entry read. She says she loves me, but I don't trust her. She's jealous, and it's getting worse. Another entry described an argument where Rachel had threatened to expose their relationship if Lisa didn't agree to see her. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to fit together. On the night of April 12th, Rachel had lured Lisa to her home under the guise of reconciliation. Surveillance footage from a nearby street camera captured Lisa entering Rachel's house around 9 p.m. She was never seen alive again. Rachel's version of events painted herself as the victim. She claimed Lisa had attacked her during an argument and she acted in self-defense. But the evidence told a different story. Lisa's injuries suggested she had been struck from behind, her skull fractured by a blunt object. The dismemberment and disposal of her body further indicated a calculated attempt to cover up the crime. In court, Rachel's cold and calculated demeanor shocked even the most seasoned observers. She showed little remorse as prosecutors detailed the gruesome steps she had taken to dispose of Lisa's body. The defense argued that Rachel's actions were a result of temporary insanity, triggered by emotional turmoil, but the jury wasn't convinced. After deliberating for just 6 hours, they returned a verdict of guilty on all counts. Rachel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but the case left lingering scars on everyone involved. For Detective Bennett, it was a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. Lisa Harper's murder wasn't just a story of love gone wrong. It was a cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of obsession and betrayal. Even as Rachel began her sentence, questions remained. How could someone like her, a successful, respected woman, be driven to commit such a heinous act? And could it have been prevented if Lisa had felt safe enough to share her fears with someone? The answers may never be fully known, but one thing is certain: the tragedy of Lisa Harper will never be forgotten. The case became a chilling reminder for the public of how fragile trust can be. Lisa had placed her faith in someone who claimed to love her, only to have that trust turned against her in the most horrific way imaginable. Her story, though tragic, served as a powerful warning about the dangers of ignoring red flags and the importance of seeking help when relationships take a dark turn. For those who loved Lisa, her memory lives on as a beacon of light in a world that can sometimes feel impossibly dark. And for Detective Bennett, the case reinforced her commitment to justice, no matter how tangled the path might become. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the gallery, their pens scratching furiously as they tried to capture every detail. Lisa Harper's family sat in the front row, their faces etched with grief, clutching each other for support. At the defense table sat Rachel Blake, her once polished demeanor replaced with a pale, emotionless mask. She stared straight ahead, her hands folded neatly in her lap, as if she were attending a business meeting rather than standing trial for first-degree murder. The trial had captivated the nation. It wasn't just the brutal nature of Lisa's death that kept people glued to their screens. It was the tangled web of secrets, lies, and betrayal that had led to it. Every day brought new revelations, each one more shocking than the last. But now, after weeks of testimony, cross-examinations, and evidence presentation, the end was finally in sight. The prosecutor, a fiery woman named Evelyn Carter, rose from her seat. She had built her case methodically, piece by piece, and now it was time for the closing argument. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice steady and commanding, "this case is about obsession. It's about a woman who couldn't accept that someone didn't want her, who allowed her jealousy and rage to consume her until she committed the ultimate act of violence. Rachel Blake didn't just kill Lisa Harper. She meticulously planned and executed her murder, and then tried to cover her tracks. But she underestimated Lisa. Even in death, Lisa left behind the evidence we needed to bring her killer to justice." The jury listened intently as Evelyn recapped the evidence. The surveillance footage that showed Lisa entering Rachel's home on the night of her disappearance. The threatening messages from Rachel, sent under the alias Raven. The bloodstains found in Rachel's car, matched to Lisa through DNA analysis. And, most damning of all, Rachel's own confession during police questioning. "She claims it was self-defense," Evelyn said, her voice rising. "But let me ask you this. Does a person acting in self-defense dismember their victim, stuff their remains into a suitcase, and abandon it by a river? Number Rachel Blake acted with intent. She wanted to erase Lisa from her life, and she nearly succeeded. But we won't let her." Rachel's defense attorney, Martin Hayes, rose next. He was a seasoned lawyer with a reputation for winning difficult cases, but even he seemed rattled by the mountain of evidence against his client. "This case is a tragedy," he began, his tone measured. "Two lives have been destroyed, Lisa Harper's and Rachel Blake's. My client made mistakes, yes, but she is not a cold-blooded killer. She is a human being who was overwhelmed by emotion, pushed to the brink by circumstances beyond her control. What happened that night was not premeditated murder. It was an act of desperation. Martin tried to shift the jury's focus to Rachel's state of mind. He described her as a woman, trapped in an unhappy marriage, seeking solace in an ill-fated relationship that spiraled out of control. Rachel didn't plan to kill Lisa, he insisted. She acted in the heat of the moment, out of fear and panic. And while her actions afterward were reprehensible, they were not those of a calculated murderer. They were the actions of someone who was terrified and didn't know what to do. As Martin spoke, Rachel remained motionless, her face unreadable. Was she remorseful, defiant, or simply resigned to her fate? No one could tell. When it was time for the jury to deliberate, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. The spectators whispered among themselves, speculating about which way the verdict would go. Lisa's family held hands tightly, their knuckles white, as they waited for the decision that would either bring them closure or leave them devastated. The jury was out for 6 hours. It felt like an eternity. When they finally returned, the room fell silent. The foreman stood clearing his throat before announcing the verdict. We find the defendant, Rachel Blake, guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Lisa's mother broke down in tears, clutching her husband as he tried to console her. Rachel's expression didn't change. She simply nodded, as if she had expected this outcome all along. The sentencing hearing followed a few weeks later. Evelyn Carter argued for the maximum penalty, emphasizing the calculated nature of Rachel's actions. Lisa Harper was a young woman with her entire life ahead of her, Evelyn said, her voice filled with emotion. She trusted Rachel, and Rachel betrayed that trust in the most horrific way imaginable. For Lisa's family, there is no parole. They will carry this pain for the rest of their lives. Rachel Blake deserves no less than life in prison without the possibility of parole. Martin Hayes pleaded for leniency, citing Rachel's lack of prior criminal history and the emotional turmoil she had been experiencing. She is not a monster, he said. She is a flawed human being who made a terrible mistake. But she is also a mother, a daughter, and a sister. Her family has already lost so much. I urge this court to show mercy. When the judge delivered the sentence, life without parole, the courtroom erupted. Lisa's family hugged each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces. Rachel was led away in handcuffs, her once pristine image now forever tarnished. For Detective Laura Bennett, who had worked tirelessly on the case, the verdict brought a sense of relief, but also a lingering sadness. She couldn't stop thinking about Lisa, the vibrant young woman whose life had been so senselessly cut short. Bennett visited Lisa's grave a few days after the sentencing, leaving a single white rose as a tribute. I'm sorry we couldn't save you, she whispered, but I promise you'll never be forgotten. The case became a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder of how love and obsession can lead to unimaginable darkness. People who had followed the trial began to reevaluate their own relationships, questioning how well they truly knew the people closest to them. For Lisa's family, the pain of her loss would never fully heal, but they took comfort in knowing that justice had been served. As for Rachel, her life behind bars was a far cry from the luxury and comfort she had once known. She spent her days in solitude, replaying the events that had led her there. Did she feel remorse, regret? Only she knew for sure. The suitcase by the river became a haunting symbol of the case, a grim reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of betrayal. And though the story of Lisa Harper faded from the headlines, it remained etched in the hearts and minds of all who had followed it, a stark warning about the darkness that can lurk beneath even the brightest surfaces.